Hello, nonprofit leaders. Today we're going to talk about development of your volunteer program. Note the term program in our title. For those of you who are grant writers, you might want to explore those capacity building grants that might fund the development of this program. Becoming intentional in your selection of volunteers will ensure that you find the right volunteers at the right time for the right jobs. This deliberate process begins with a need assessment. You may have done some of this if you did the work from video 2. There are 2 steps to assessing your volunteer needs. First is to categorize the area of need, and then interview your staff for the needs within those categories. Categories you might look to in order to assess needs are those common to most nonprofits that we've been discussing earlier in our video series: communications and outreach, programs and services, resource development, fundraising, your people areas, operations, and administration. So what you're going to want to do is interview your staff that work in these areas. This is another opportunity to work differently with your staff, understand any challenges they may face in their job, and make them feel appreciated. Ask them what they need. Once you know what you need, develop job descriptions just as you would for a paid position. This will ensure that you identify the skills you need for each position. A list of what to include in your job description is included in the volunteer program manual you'll receive by filling in the form on my website. Again, the link is on that last slide. Next is recruitment. But where do you find volunteers? Well, the first place you're going to look is within your own network. Ask your board, staff, and current volunteers to provide you a list of friends, family, or connections that are interested in the work of your nonprofit who might also be interested in volunteering. There's also a list of 15 sources in the appendix to the program manual that you're going to receive. Some are national that allow you to post for your own town, and others are local to Austin, Texas, but will provide you with ideas for seeking volunteers in your own town. Don't underestimate the power of connecting with a corporation or business. Some corporations have volunteer programs that will provide a group of volunteers for your specific projects. Some corporations will even provide you with funds to give their employees this opportunity. And a few have programs that provide grants to those nonprofits that give their employees volunteer opportunities. For instance, check to see if you have an Intel in your area who has had generous programs like that in the past. Most of these corporations have a community relations person you will want to contact. Another very viable source for volunteers is service clubs. Call or email your local service club. Tell them what you do and ask if you can make a short presentation. Many of them will invite you to make that short presentation about your organization during their lunch, so you get to eat for free. And you can make your pitch for volunteer needs at that lunch. Sometimes a service club, such as a local Rotary Club, will actually adopt your nonprofit for all of their volunteering service projects. There are numerous other methods for recruiting volunteers, such as at volunteer fairs, farmers markets, or community events that allow nonprofits to have a table or booth at their event. Finally, check the websites of your nearby university and college for service groups or clubs. Like, with Travis Audubon, we used biology and wildlife biology clubs and environmental clubs to help us with our restoration efforts on our nature preserves. The next step is to design your recruitment message. You'll be using your needs assessment and your job descriptions to design the message. And this is what your message will include. You're going to describe your need, which will be a problem, an issue, that kind of thing. And then the solution. How will the volunteer help you to solve that problem or issue? And although it's called questions, you should list out any special skills that they might need to help you solve that problem. And then the benefits. What are they going to get out of helping you or your organization? And the contact point. Who should they contact to become involved? Now, in the part where you're describing what they will get from helping, you might want to turn to somebody in your organization that can write this in a really compelling fashion. If you don't have someone like that, you might need to find a volunteer that writes well, that can write in a compelling fashion. So maybe your first recruitment message would be for that type of volunteer. The next step is to screen for volunteers. The type and extent of screening will depend on the nature of the volunteer position. For instance, if the volunteer will be working directly with a client, resident, or child, your screening process will need to include background checks. If you are screening for someone who can develop your website, you'll want to see a portfolio of their prior work. If you're screening for administrative work requiring typing, you may need to conduct a typing test. Again, this should be very similar to the process you'd use to hire paid staff. You will ask candidates to fill out an application. A sample application is included in the program manual you're going to get when you fill out the form on my website. You'll then interview your candidates as you would your paid staff. And then you'll select and train your volunteers. Keep in mind that proper training goes a long way to protect your nonprofit should any legal issue arise, including injury or property damage or claims of harassment. Appropriate training will include orientation and onboarding, which we will delve into in the next video. When you receive my volunteer program manual, you will find detailed information for all these steps. The last sections of your manual include record keeping, management, keeping your volunteers engaged for the long term, and recognizing your volunteers. One of my executive director friends says that volunteers are like cash. You should treat them the way you treat your donors. Next up is video number 6, your volunteer handbook, which is what you're going to give your volunteers once they come on board. When you go to this link, you'll see the volunteer policy that you can download immediately, but you have to fill out the little form to get the volunteer program manual and actually the handbook as well. But make sure you're not using an Edge browser for this, because every time I've looked, I don't see the form on my Edge browser, but when I go to Chrome or I think it's Explorer, I can see the form. So if you don't see it, you're probably in Edge. So if you have any questions or problems with getting that, just let me know by emailing me at nancy@poweryourmission.com. I'll see you soon.